The spoon was halfway to Seojin Park's mouth when his hand stopped. The folded napkin sat by his dessert plate, harmless and quiet, like it hadn't just turned the whole night upside down. The restaurant glowed like money. Gold light from the chandeliers hit polished glass and white linen, every table full of people who thought they were important. But the only person who mattered sat at the center of the room, in a tailored black suit, watching everything without looking like he was watching at all. Seojin's fiancée, Vivienne Croy, leaned close to him, her fingers resting on his wrist as if the world belonged to them. It was Nichelle Williams who had put the dessert down.
Do not eat, she poisoned you.
Nichelle, in a fitted black server's jacket and scuffed work shoes, tray still trembling in her hand as she stepped back. Her pulse thumped in her ears so loudly she almost missed it when his thumb brushed the edge of the napkin. No one else at the table seemed to notice. Cameras flashed from the corner where the press waited for a perfect engagement shot. Seojin unfolded the napkin with 2 fingers. 4 words stared back at him in shaky ink. Your fiancé poisoned you. He did not blink. He did not shout. He did not look around like a man in shock. He simply set the spoon down. The movement was small, but it cut through Nichelle's nerves worse than any scream. His eyes lifted, and for the first time that night, he looked straight at her. Vivienne followed his gaze. Her lips curved, but it was not a friendly smile. Something wrong, my love? She asked, her accent smooth and controlled. He slid the napkin under his palm. Vivienne, he said, voice soft enough that the nearby tables had to lean in to hear. Why don't you try the first bite? The laughter around the table came like a wave. Someone made a joke about chivalry and sharing. But Vivienne's laugh stalled in her throat. For a single second, the mask slipped. Her eyes flashed, then cooled again as she tilted her chin. Are you teasing me? She asked. The spoon shook just a little in her hand. Nichelle saw that shake. She had seen many things tonight. The quick whisper in the staff corridor. The unmarked vial under the dessert tray. The way Vivienne had checked her reflection not in a mirror, but in the shine of a knife. Every piece settled in her chest like stones. The spoon hovered over the dessert, the whole table turned toward Vivienne as if the room held its breath. Seojin's gaze never left her face. He looked calm, polite, almost tender, but there was a weight in his eyes that made the nearest security guard straighten up. Nichelle backed away, tray tucked tight against her ribs. She counted the steps to the kitchen door. 1, 2, 3. If Vivienne tasted it and nothing happened, she was finished. If Vivienne refused, she was finished. Either way, someone at that table was going to ask who brought the plate. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and really I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Vivienne's wrist twitched. You don't trust me? She said, smiling wide for the cameras. The spoon still didn't move closer to her lips. The room hummed with low talk, clinking glasses, the click of expensive heels across marble. Underneath it all, Nichelle heard only one sound, the frantic beat of her own heart. Seojin leaned back, giving Vivienne all the attention in the world. I trust you, he answered slowly. I'd just like to see you enjoy what's meant for me. For a heartbeat, Nichelle thought Vivienne might actually do it. Might take the bite to prove a point, to keep the picture-perfect night alive. Instead, Vivienne set the spoon down with a careful clink and slid her hand over his. I'm saving room for later, she said lightly. You know I prefer champagne to sugar. That was enough. Seojin's fingers drummed once on the tablecloth, then stilled. The napkin disappeared into his jacket pocket in a single smooth move. To the outside world, it looked like nothing. To Nichelle, it felt like a countdown had started. She turned toward the swinging kitchen doors, forcing herself not to rush. Her legs wanted to run. Her brain screamed that the cameras had seen everything. That somewhere in that room, someone already had her face in a frame, ready to zoom, ready to freeze. At the threshold, she glanced back. Seojin's eyes were no longer on Vivienne. They were on her. Calm. Focused. Measuring. Nichelle pushed through the doors, breath catching. Behind her, At the center table of the Hollis room, the man everyone feared had just learned that the person beside him might want him dead, and he knew exactly which waitress had decided to say it out loud. If you were sitting in that restaurant watching this scene unfold, whose eyes would you be watching, Nichelle's, Seojin's, or Vivienne's? The plate shattered before Nichelle realized she had dropped it. Porcelain shards slid across the prep counter, a slice grazing her wrist as the kitchen noise crashed over her, shouting chefs, sizzling pans, orders being called out like nothing outside those swinging doors was wrong. "Shell!" a voice snapped. "You good?" Tiara Johnson, another server in the same black jacket, grabbed the edge of the tray before it hit the floor. Tiara's braids were tied back in a red scarf, her brown eyes sharp as she looked from the broken plate to Nichelle's pale face. "I'm fine," Nichelle forced out. Her throat felt tight. She wiped her wrist on a towel, ignoring the sting. Hands slipped. "You don't drop plates," Tiara said. "You stack 6 at a time and yell at me for carrying 3. What happened out there?" Nichelle's fingers closed around the damp towel so hard her knuckles hurt. The image of Seojin's eyes, steady and unreadable, burned in her mind. The napkin? The spoon? Vivienne's tiny flicker of fear. "Nothing," she lied. "Just long night." From the far end of the kitchen, the manager, Mr. Harlow, barked another order. "Table 7 wants another bottle. And nobody touches the engagement table unless I say so. That means you, Williams. You did your stint. Rotate." Too late, Nichelle thought. She wished she had not gone near that table at all. Tiara shoved the tray into her hands again, lower this time. "You're shaking," she said quietly. "You see something?" The memory punched through, the staff corridor an hour earlier, the dim fluorescent light, Vivienne's sharp profile as she leaned into her phone. Nichelle had been walking by with a stack of menus when she heard it. "He thinks love makes him untouchable," Vivienne had whispered. "He forgot I was raised by men who poisoned from a distance." The words had frozen Nichelle in place. A few minutes later, while setting up the dessert station, she had found an unmarked vial beneath the silver tray meant for Seojin's final course. No label. No explanation. Just clear liquid and cold glass. Back in the present, Nichelle realized Tiara was still waiting. "I heard her," Nichelle said under her breath. "In the hallway. And then I found something under his dessert tray. I had to warn him." Tiara's eyes widened. "You had to what?" "I wrote a note," Nichelle whispered. "Slipped it by his plate." Tiara stared at her like she just confessed to walking into traffic on purpose. "Girl, are you trying to die? That man doesn't even flinch when security walks him in with 3 cars. You don't know who's listening. You don't know who's watching." Nichelle knew all of that. She also knew what it felt like to realize you were too late. Her chest tightened, memory pulling her back to a different night, a different kind of quiet, a phone call that never came. "You should have told management," Tiara hissed. "Or security. Or somebody who isn't you." "And say what?" Nichelle shot back. "That his fancy fiancée is planning to kill him with dessert?" They would have laughed, or worse, they would have repeated it in the wrong ear. Tiara looked away for a moment, jaw clenched. "We got rent due next week and you out here playing hero." "Somebody had to," Nichelle murmured. The kitchen doors flew open, slamming against the walls. 2 men in dark suits stepped inside, their presence cutting through the heat and noise. Both wore small earpieces. Their eyes scanned the room with the same cold focus. Every chef and server within 10 feet went silent. One of the men spoke. "Which one is Nichelle Williams?" Her heart stuttered. Tiara's hand brushed her elbow, a quick warning. Nichelle lifted her chin anyway. "Here." The man's gaze landed on her. No smile. No anger. Just a decision already made. "You need to come with us." Mr. Harlow started toward them, blustering. "Excuse me, gentlemen, my staff is busy." The second man turned his head, and whatever he let show in his expression made Harlow stop mid-step. "Mr. Park requested her," he said flatly. "She comes now." Tiara's fingers closed briefly around Nichelle's wrist. You don't have to go alone, she whispered. Nichelle swallowed, forcing her voice not to crack. If I don't, it'll be worse. She handed the tray to Tiara, wiped her damp palms on her apron, and stepped forward. The first man moved behind her, a silent shadow. The second pushed open the kitchen door. The noise of the dining room hit her again, softer now, like it was far away. As they led her past the tables, conversations dipped. People pretended not to stare. Some did not bother to pretend. Flashbulbs still popped near the entrance where the press hovered, but the cameras had begun to lower. The party had shifted. The air felt heavier. When they reached the main table, Vivienne was nowhere in sight. The dessert plate sat untouched. The chair beside Seojin was empty. He stood when Nichelle approached. Not out of respect. More like a man preparing for a different scene. Bring her to the VIP room, he said quietly, not looking away from her face. Nichelle's knees felt weak, but her steps did not falter as they guided her toward the side corridor, away from the crowd, away from the light. If you were in Tiara's shoes and watched your friend get called away by a man like Seojin, would you try to stop her, or let her go and hope she came back? The door shut with a heavy click that swallowed the outside noise. The VIP room was all polished wood and antique mirrors, a low chandelier casting soft light over leather chairs that looked like nobody ever dared to sit in them. Nichelle stood in the middle of the room, hands clasped in front of her to hide the tremble. Her server's jacket suddenly felt too tight, the collar itching against her neck. The men who had escorted her took positions by the door. Another man, taller, with a scar along his jaw and watchful eyes, stood near the window that looked out over the city. The skyline glittered, but the glass reflected their faces back at them, turning the room into its own quiet world. Seojin Park stood by the balcony doors, jacket open, tie slightly loosened as if he had done it without thinking. He held the napkin in one hand, the faint letters still visible where her ink had pressed too hard. For a long moment, no one spoke. You wrote this, he said at last. His voice was calm, low. It was not a question. Nichelle nodded once. Yes. He studied her, eyes moving over her face, her posture, the small cut on her wrist. Do you know what it means to accuse my fiancée in this way? Nichelle's mouth felt dry. She forced herself to meet his gaze. It means she isn't just your fiancée, she answered. It means she's dangerous. And you know that, or you wouldn't have asked her to taste your food. The man by the window, the one who had to be his enforcer, shifted his weight. His name, she remembered, was Kiro. She had heard it in passing when they arrived, spoken by security in hushed tones. Seojin's eyes flicked to Kiro, then back to Nichelle. You heard something, he said. In the hallway. Yes. What exactly? Nichelle's fingers dug into her own palm. She said you think love makes you untouchable? That she was raised by men who poison from a distance. Then I found a vial under the dessert tray meant for you. The words hung between them like fog. Seojin turned the napkin over once, the paper crinkling softly. You understand who Vivienne Croy is, he said. Her family controls 2 senators and a bank. Her father has people in places you only read about. If she is exposed, the balance shifts. Not just for me. For this whole coast. Nichelle's jaw tightened. Maybe that balance needs to shift, she shot back. Because tonight she tried to kill you at your own celebration. That spark in her voice surprised even her. Kiro's gaze sharpened. One of the guards at the door glanced their way, then quickly looked down. Seojin stepped closer, closing some of the distance between them. Up close, the smooth lines of his suit could not hide the tension in his shoulders. Why would you risk your life for me? He asked. You don't know me. The question made her stomach twist. There were 100 reasons not to answer. 100 reasons to stay quiet, say she panicked, say it was a mistake. Instead, another answer pushed forward, one she had been carrying for years. Because I know what happens when nobody warns you, she said. My brother tried to warn someone once. Nobody listened. Something passed over Seojin's face, quick as a shadow. Devin Williams, he said. Hearing her brother's name in his mouth knocked the breath from her lungs. You know his name? Of course. He turned away for a moment, facing the city lights through the glass. Do you know why your brother died? Nichelle's heart slammed against her ribs. The room seemed to tilt, the chandelier blurring at the edges. He got mixed up with the wrong people, she said slowly. Your people. No. The word was firm, quiet. He worked for me, yes. But he died because he went into Vivienne's circle to find who was supplying them with cyanide capsules. He found something. They silenced him before he could reach me. Her knees almost buckled. All the anger she had carried, the late nights wondering, the pictures she had built in her mind of the man in front of her, it all cracked down the middle. You knew, she whispered. All this time, you knew something about it and didn't say anything. You let me hate you. I suspected, he corrected. Suspicions are not enough in my world. I needed proof. You just gave me both motive and a witness. Kiro stepped forward. Boss, he said quietly, we have movement. Vivienne's people are pressing the back entrance. They're trying to move her. The word move landed heavy. Nichelle realized what it meant. They were not just trying to walk Vivienne out. They were trying to extract her before anyone could ask questions. Seojin's calm cracked at the edges. His jaw clenched, the hand holding the napkin curling into a fist. Stop them, he ordered. Kiro nodded once and slipped out, the door closing behind him. For a moment, Nichelle and Seojin stood in the quiet room, the city beyond the glass and a storm building between them. You put yourself in the middle of something you don't understand, Seojin said, eyes narrow. Do you know what happens to people who become loose ends in a night like this? Nichelle swallowed hard. If I hadn't said anything, you might be dead by now. He tilted his head, regarding her like a puzzle piece that did not quite fit, but mattered anyway. Or you might have walked out of work and gone home like any other night. Before he could say more, a scream cut through the hallway outside, muffled but sharp. Footsteps thundered. Then the door burst open. Kiro stepped back in, jacket smeared with fresh blood. Vivienne's people hit the stairwell, he said, voice flat. We stopped too. The rest got her into a car. She's gone. The chandelier light caught on the smear of red across his sleeve. For the first time that night, something raw flashed in Seojin's eyes. Not fear. Not grief. Something closer to fury controlled by a thin thread. Find her, he said, each word ice cold. Kiro nodded and disappeared again. Nichelle stood in the center of the room, feeling the ground under her feet shift. She had come in as a server. Now she was the only person left who had heard Vivienne's threat, the one who had seen the vial, the one who had drawn a line on a napkin and shoved the whole night off course. She was no longer just a witness. She was a problem, and a tool. If you were in Nichelle's place and just learned the man you blamed for years might have tried to protect your brother, would you trust him, or would that truth make you even more afraid of what came next? Rain hammered the roof of the black SUV as the city blurred past. Streetlights streaked across the tinted windows, turning the world outside into lines of gold and white that flashed over Nichelle's face. She sat in the back seat, seatbelt cutting across her chest, fingers tangled together in her lap. The server's jacket was gone, traded for a dark hoodie someone had shoved at her before they left the restaurant. Across from her, Kiro sat with his arms folded, eyes on the road ahead even though he wasn't the one driving. Another man handled the wheel in front, expression locked, attention sharp. Seojin sat beside Nichelle, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his shoulder. The small silver case rested in his palm, the same case that had held the vial she'd found under the dessert tray. It clicked softly as he turned it over and over. You didn't have to bring me, Nichelle said, voice low. Yes, he answered. I did. The city outside shifted from bright storefronts to darker warehouses and docks. Neon signs gave way to shipping cranes and stacks of containers. The rain made everything shine, puddles reflecting the glare of their headlights. You risked your life for someone you only knew by rumor, Seojin added. That makes you either very foolish or very honest. Either way, I can't leave you where anyone can reach you tonight. You think Vivienne's people would come after a waitress? Nichelle asked. They don't even know my name. They know your face, Kiro cut in. His voice was deeper up close, steady in a way that hinted at long practice. They know someone warned him. That's enough. Nichelle's chest tightened. She remembered the cameras. The flashing lights. The way her hands had shaken as she slid the napkin down. In her worst nightmares, she had never pictured ending the night in a car like this, rain smearing across the glass, riding towards something she could not see. Where are we going? She asked. Seojin looked down at the case in his hand, then out at the wet streets. The harbor, he said. One of Vivienne's safe points. If she's running, she'll go to familiar ground, somewhere she thinks her people can shield her. Nichelle stared at him. You sound sure. She's predictable, he replied. She believes her father's reach can cover every mistake. The word, predictable, landed strange in Nichelle's head, brushing against all the years she had spent thinking the world was random and cruel. If you knew she was that dangerous, she asked, why stay engaged to her at all? He was quiet for a beat. Because taking apart her family's network from the outside is messy, he said. Getting close makes it cleaner. Cleaner? Nichelle repeated. You call this clean? He met her eyes for a moment. There was no apology there. Just truth. There are fewer bodies this way than there could have been. Silence filled the car, thick as the rain. Nichelle looked down at her hands, at the faint line where the plate had cut her skin. It seemed small compared to the blood on Kiro's jacket, compared to the things she had not seen but now had to live with. You keep talking like Devin chose this, she said quietly. Like he walked into your world with open arms. He did, Seojin said. He came to me. He wanted to help expose the people who were pushing poison into your neighborhood. He wanted a better life for you, for your mother. He was good at reading people. Too good. That's why Vivienne's circle noticed him. The lump in Nichelle's throat returned. You could have told us, she whispered. You could have shown up at our door and said something. Anything. And what would you have believed? He asked, turning his head toward her. A man like me on your front steps, telling you your brother died doing something brave? Or the rumors that say I ordered it? She had no answer. That hurt more than any of his words. The SUV slowed. Out the window, Nichelle saw the harbor come into view. A long stretch of dark water. The silhouettes of cranes reaching into the sky. A warehouse near the edge of the pier glowed orange at its broken windows, flames licking higher with every gust of wind. Looks like we're late, Kiro said. The driver pulled to a stop behind a stack of shipping containers. Through the rain-streaked glass, Nichelle could make out figures moving near the warehouse entrance. Shadows, flashes of light, the brief outline of someone being dragged. Gunshots cracked in the distance, sharp and ugly. Nichelle flinched. Seojin, by contrast, went very still. Stay in the car, he said to her. No matter what you hear. He reached for the door handle. Wait, Nichelle blurted. You're walking into that with just them? She nodded toward Kiro and the driver. No, Kiro said. There are more already in position. You won't see them unless something goes wrong. That makes me feel so much better, she muttered under her breath. Seojin paused, just for a heartbeat, as if he had heard the strain behind the joke. You warned me once tonight, he said. Let that be enough. Stay here. Lock the doors. If I don't come back, Kiro will decide where you go next. The idea of her fate being left in someone else's hands again made Nichelle's skin crawl. But she nodded anyway. Fine. He stepped out into the rain, coat flaring in the wind, Kiro right behind him. The doors shut with a dull thud. The sound of the storm rushed in through the brief gap, then disappeared as the car sealed her in. Nichelle watched them move through the downpour toward the burning warehouse. Their dark figures disappeared between stacks of crates and shadows, swallowed by orange light and smoke. Her heart hammered. Her palms were slick. Her mind whispered one thought over and over. If he dies, you help start this night. She closed her eyes for a second, breathing in and out. When she opened them again, flames had burst higher through the warehouse roof, painting the rain in streaks of light. The doors were locked. The engine hummed. And still, every part of her body screamed to move. If you were trapped in that SUV, watching someone walk into danger because of a warning you gave, would you sit still like they told you, or risk everything to follow? The car door clicked open before Nichelle could talk herself out of it. Cold rain slapped her face as she slid out of the SUV, the wind grabbing at her hoodie and whipping it against her back. She hesitated only for a heartbeat, glancing toward the driver's seat. The man behind the wheel glanced at her in the rearview mirror. His jaw flexed, but he said nothing. Maybe he thought she would circle back. Maybe he knew stopping her would be worse. The warehouse loomed ahead, flames pouring from shattered windows, lighting the slick concrete in wild orange and red. Smoke rolled out in heavy waves, mixing with the rain to create a choking, bitter haze. The air smelled like wet ash and something chemical that burned the back of her throat. Nichelle kept low as she moved, weaving between stacked containers and abandoned pallets. Shouts cut through the storm, English, Korean, French curses thrown into the night. Gunshots flared now and then, lighting up shapes in doorways, people diving for cover. She saw Kiro first. He crouched behind a concrete barrier, firing in short bursts toward the warehouse entrance. Two of Seojin's men flanked him, one clutching his arm where blood soaked through his sleeve. Kiro barked an order, and the injured man shifted position, teeth gritted. Nichelle's sneakers slipped on the wet ground. She caught herself on the edge of a crate, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed that she did not belong here. She was a waitress. She was supposed to be wiping tables, counting tips, arguing with Tiara over bus routes home. Not ducking stray bullets at a dock in the middle of the night. Another shot rang out, closer this time. A figure stumbled out of the warehouse, one hand pressed to his side, the other gripping a pistol. He saw Nichelle, eyes widening, raising the gun. A blast from the left knocked him sideways. Kiro lowered his weapon, smoke drifting from the barrel. "Stay down!" he yelled at her. "What are you doing here?" Nichelle pressed herself behind the crate, chest heaving. "He said he wouldn't make it out alone," she shouted back. "You really think I was going to sit in the car and bake cookies?" Kiro swore under his breath in a language she didn't know, then jerked his head toward a narrow side path leading closer to the building. "If you're here, you don't move unless I say," he snapped. "You see an opening to get inside without crossing fire, you take it and hug the wall. Got it?" "Got it." He turned back to the fight, firing again. Nichelle waited for a brief lull, then sprinted along the path he'd given her, feet splashing through puddles, breath ragged. The side door of the warehouse hung crooked on its hinges, half torn off. Heat washed over her as she stepped inside. The interior of the warehouse was chaos. Wooden crates burned in stacks. Flames crawled along a row of metal shelves. The air shimmered with heat, and every breath tasted like smoke. Cash, stacks and stacks of it, lay scattered across the floor, some already curling black at the edges. Near the center of the space, Vivienne Croy stood in a torn evening gown, hair wild, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She held a lighter in one hand, the flame dancing close to a pile of bundled bills. The fire behind her threw her into sharp relief, every line of her body strained. "You could have ruled the world with me," she shouted, voice cracking. "Instead, you kept playing savior to people who wouldn't even say your name out loud." Across from her, Seojin stood with his coat soaked from the rain, shirt half open, a blooming stain of blood near his shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. His face was set, eyes steady. In his left hand, he held the small silver case. The lid was open now, the empty slot where the vial had been clearly visible. "That's called loyalty," he answered. Vivienne laughed, the sound jagged. "Loyalty," she spat. "You gave these docks new trucks and new roofs, and they still whispered about you like a ghost. You thought marrying into power would fix that? You thought my name would clean your hands? Nichelle stayed in the shadows of a toppled stack of crates, heart hammering, watching. The heat pressed against her back. Embers floated in the air like angry fireflies. You poisoned me with this? Seojin asked, lifting the open case. Vivienne's eyes flashed. You poisoned yourself the day you decided you cared whether these people lived or died. Love made you weak. She lunged. It happened fast. She moved toward him with the lighter in one hand and something glinting in the other, another vial, this one half full, pulled from somewhere in her gown. She swung, trying to slam it into his chest. Seojin twisted aside, catching her wrist. The vial slipped from her grip, rolling across the floor toward the burning cache. He forced her arm back, muscles straining, their faces inches apart. Look at yourself, he said, voice low but firm. Is this what power looks like to you? Power is walking away while they choke on the smoke. She hissed. Her knee shot up, catching his side. He grunted, grip loosening for half a second. It was enough for her to lunge toward the fallen vial, fingers reaching. Nichelle moved without thinking. She burst from behind the crates, sliding across the ash-dusted floor and slamming her hand down on the glass just before Vivienne reached it. The hot concrete burned through her jeans, but she held on. Vivienne's head snapped toward her. For a moment, the world narrowed to the rage in that woman's eyes. You! Vivienne snarled. The waitress. Nichelle clutched the vial to her chest. You should have stuck to champagne, she said, voice shaking but loud enough to carry. Vivienne surged forward, free hand reaching for Nichelle's throat. Seojin grabbed her from behind, arm across her shoulders, pulling her back. With his other hand, he pried the vial from Nichelle's fingers and held it up between them. This was meant for me, he said to Vivienne. You can take credit for it. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. He didn't answer with words. Outside, another explosion shook the walls, sending dust raining down from the ceiling. Flames licked closer to the door. Doors slammed somewhere in the distance as people either fled or braced for the next hit. In the center of that burning room, with cash curling to ash and rain hissing through holes in the roof, Nichelle watched as the man she had tried to save turned the poison back toward the woman who had started it all. If you were standing beside that fire, watching justice twist into something you weren't sure you believed in, would you look away, or force yourself to see exactly how far things would go? Vivienne's body hit the concrete just as the roof groaned above them. The vial slipped from Seojin's hand, shattered near her lips, and the bitter smell of chemicals cut through the smoke. For a second, everything froze. Vivienne's eyes went wide, then unfocused, her fingers clawing at nothing as the poison rushed through her system. Her lips moved like she wanted to curse him one last time, but no sound came out. Then the ceiling cracked. A flaming beam crashed down where Seojin had been standing a heartbeat earlier. He lunged sideways, dragging Nichelle with him. They hit the floor hard. Heat punched against their backs as fire swallowed the spot where Vivienne had just been standing. Nichelle's lungs burned. She coughed, struggling to pull in air that didn't feel like it was trying to cook her from the inside out. Her elbows screamed where it hit the ground, but she pushed up anyway. Get up, Seojin ordered, voice rough. He grabbed her hand and pulled her away from the spreading flames. They stumbled through smoke, past stacks of crates collapsing under the heat. Money flooded through the air like blackened snow. Somewhere outside, more shots rang out, then the sharp wail of sirens in the distance. The rest of the city was finally waking up to the mess on its doorstep. A metal door near the side wall stood half open. Kiro appeared there, face streaked with soot, one sleeve soaked in blood that was not his own. We have to move now, he shouted. Roof's about to go. Seojin glanced back once at Vivienne's still form, swallowed by heat and falling debris. There was no pity in his face. Just a tightness around his eyes that made Nichelle's chest ache. He shoved that feeling down and pushed Nichelle toward the door. Go. She staggered out into the rain, the sudden cold hitting her like a slap. Her shoes skidded on wet concrete as she grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. Behind her, Kiro and Seojin emerged, both coughing, both streaked with soot and blood. The warehouse groaned again. This time, the roof gave up. With a roaring crash, it collapsed inward, sending a wash of sparks and smoke into the sky. Flames shot higher, turning the rain into steam. Nichelle watched it burn, heart pounding, clothes plastered to her skin. Somewhere under that twisted metal and fire lay Vivienne Croy, heiress, schemer, poisoner, undone by her own plan. "That's it," Kiro said between coughs. "She's gone. Gone." The word felt heavy and light at the same time. The threat that had set this whole night in motion was finished, but the weight of what had replaced it pressed hard on Nichelle's shoulders. Bodies. Secrets. Choices that could not be taken back. Blue and red flashes glowed faintly on the far side of the harbor. Police. Fire trucks. Flickers of official help that had missed the real show. "We're leaving," Seojin said. "Our story ends before theirs begins." Kiro nodded and jogged ahead to clear a path. Nichelle turned to follow, then realized Seojin was swaying, his hand pressed to his side. The blood on his shirt had spread, dark and wet, trailing down his ribs. "You're hit," she said. "It's fine," he replied. His voice had lost some of its strength. "Just a graze." He took one more step and almost fell. Without thinking, Nichelle ducked under his arm, bracing his weight against her smaller frame. "You're lying," she muttered. "You can barely stand." His breath hitched, but he didn't argue. "You should have stayed in the car. And you should have stayed in your chair at the restaurant," she shot back. "Guess we're both bad at listening." Together they moved away from the blaze, into the shadows between the containers, the storm washing ash and blood from their clothes. The night air tasted like smoke, metal, and something new, the strange, sharp truth that came after a line had been crossed for good. If you watched someone walk out of a fire like that with blood on their hands and on their shirt, would you see a monster, a savior, or something in between? If this story has you locked in, make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are on, because the hardest part for Nichelle and Seojin is only just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Nichelle pressed a towel against Seojin's side while the city pretended to sleep outside the tall windows. The safe house apartment sat high above downtown, all glass and dark wood, the kind of place that should have hosted quiet brunches and soft music instead of blood and smoke. Seojin lay back on a leather couch, breath shallow, shirt cut open along one side so Kiro could get to the wound. The bullet had torn a path along his ribs, not deep enough to kill him instantly, but deep enough to leave him weak and shaking. "Hold that there," Kiro said to Nichelle, nodding at the towel in her hands. "Harder. He won't break." Seojin gave him a look that said he might, actually, break someone for that comment, but he didn't argue. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His eyes were half closed. Nichelle pressed down, feeling the heat of his skin, the steady pulse of his heartbeat under her fingers. "You need a hospital," she said. "No hospitals," Seojin answered. "Too many questions. Too many eyes." Kiro dipped a cloth into a bowl of water and wiped soot from his boss's face. "We have a doctor coming," he said. "One of ours." 10 minutes. 10 minutes felt like forever. Nichelle's back ached. Her lungs still stung from smoke. Her brain replayed the warehouse over and over, the look on Vivienne's face, the moment the vial turned against her, the roof caving in. Every time she blinked, she saw it again. "You still think this was cleaner?" she asked quietly. Seojin opened his eyes fully. "Cleaner than the list of people she would have taken down with her, yes." "You made her drink it," Nichelle said. "You could have handed her to the police. And watched her father buy her out of every charge." His jaw tightened. "She would have walked away untouched, and everyone who helped me stop her would have been hunted. Including you." That truth settled over the room like a fresh layer of smoke. Nichelle hated that it made sense. She hated that this world did not work in straight lines, that justice did not come in neat packages with court dates and clear endings. "Devin thought he could fix things by playing by the rules," Seojin continued, voice softer. He tried to feed information through the right channels. It almost worked. Almost. But almost got him killed. There are places where the law is a suggestion, not a shield. Nichelle swallowed. You use that as an excuse for everything you do? No, he said. Just the things I can't walk away from and still sleep at night. Kiro glanced at him, then at Nichelle. You should know, he said to her. Your brother pushed hard to keep your name out of it. He made us promise that if anything happened to him, you would never be pulled into our world. Nichelle's grip on the towel tightened. That worked out great, she said bitterly. Tonight was not part of that plan, Kiro admitted. You changed the script when you wrote that note. Nichelle looked down at her hands, at the blood soaking through the towel, at the man on the couch who had become both the reason her brother died and the one trying to explain it. Why tell me all this? She asked. You could have kept lying. Let me go on thinking you were just the villain of Devin's story. Because you walked into danger for me, Seojin said. Because you stood in that warehouse and refused to leave. That kind of choice demands the truth. The door buzzer sounded, sharp and brief. Kiro moved quickly, checking the security screen before letting in a compact woman with a medical bag and tired eyes. She didn't waste time with greetings. What did you do this time? She muttered to Seojin as she put on gloves. Someone else tried to kill me, he said. I returned the favor. She snorted. At least you're honest. Nichelle stepped back while the doctor worked, cleaning and stitching the wound with quick, efficient movements. Seojin's knuckles turned white where he gripped the edge of the couch, but he did not make a sound. From the window, the city looked almost peaceful. Soft lights. Quiet streets. People sleeping in tiny apartments, never knowing that a burning warehouse at the harbor had just shifted power lines in ways they might never hear about. Nichelle leaned her head against the cool glass, eyes closing for a moment. Her world had been small before tonight, rent, double shifts, memories of Devin. Now it stretched into places she had never wanted to see. If you were in Nichelle's position, finally seeing the cost of the justice your loved one died chasing, would you stay close to the man who told you the truth, or run as far from his world as you could? If you're feeling that pull between right and wrong, loyalty and fear, hit subscribe and ring that bell, because the next part of this story asks the question, what would you trade for safety, and what would you never trade at all? The offer came in the quiet after the painkillers kicked in. Rain tapped against the windows. The doctor had left. Kiro stood in the hallway, on the phone with someone Nichelle could not see, voice low and controlled. Seojin sat upright now, pale but steady, a clean bandage wrapped around his side. His suit jacket lay draped over a chair. Without it, and without the usual perfect edge to his clothes, he looked more like a man and less like a legend whispered about in back rooms. Nichelle sat across from him at a small table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Her eyes were red at the edges, but there were no tears left. You should be home, Seojin said. Sleeping. Forgetting as much of tonight as you can. She let out a humorless laugh. You really think I can just clock in tomorrow and serve cocktails like nothing happened? You could, he said. Most people would. Pretend they saw nothing. Let the news give them some cleaned-up version and move on. I'm not most people, she replied. I know, he said quietly. That's the problem. She looked up at him. Problem? You saw too much, he said. You know Vivienne tried to kill me. You know how she died. You know Devin's name in my mouth. That makes you a target for anyone who wants leverage, and a risk even to the ones who don't. So what are you saying? She asked. You going to disappear me now? Put me in a suitcase and drop me in that harbor? His mouth twitched, but there was no humor in it. If that were my plan, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Then what? She pushed. He folded his hands on the table. I'm saying you need protection, he answered. Real protection. Not the kind that comes from filing a report and hoping someone in an office takes it seriously. She bristled. Protection sounds a lot like control. It can be, he agreed. If you let it. Or it can be a trade. A trade for what? For your honesty, he said. For your eyes. For the courage you showed tonight. She frowned. You want to hire me. Not to carry a gun, he said. You're not a soldier. But you are good at reading people. You saw through Vivienne's act quicker than men who have watched her for months. You hear things others ignore. You notice details. That's a skill. And it is rare. Her stomach flipped. You want me in your business. I want you close enough that I can make sure no one touches you without answering to me, he said. In return, you help me see the things I miss. The small things. You tell me when the room feels wrong. You tell me when the story doesn't line up. Nichelle thought of Devin. Of the way he used to read neighbors' moods from across the street. Of the way he had walked into Seojin's world believing he could make a difference. You think Devin would want this for me? She asked. Seojin's eyes softened, just a little. I think Devin wanted you safe and free, he said. He wanted you to have choices he didn't. Right now, your choices are limited. You walk away alone and hope Vivienne's people don't decide to clean up loose ends. Or you let me pull you into my circle and make sure anyone coming for you has to get through me. It wasn't clean. It wasn't simple. Nichelle knew that the second she stepped into his world as anything other than a server, she would never be just on the outside again. And if I say no? She asked. Then I still put a watch on your building, he said. I still move you out of your current place and into somewhere that doesn't leak heat through the windows and sit next to an alley with 3 blind spots. I still make sure Tiara gets a little bonus in her paycheck so she stops thinking about picking up shifts at that bar across town that doesn't check ID at the door. Her head snapped up. You checked on Tiara? I check on anyone who might get caught in my storms, he said. Especially when they tried to shield someone I owe. Oh? She echoed. You told the truth when everyone else stayed quiet, he said. You warned me when you could have just watched. That counts as a debt in my book. She stared at him over the untouched tea. The man who had frightened her for years. The man she had blamed for Devin's death. The man who had stood in a burning warehouse and made a choice she still wasn't sure how to feel about. Okay, she said finally. But if I do this, it's on my terms. He nodded. Name them. I don't carry anything, she said. No guns. No knives. I'm eyes and ears, not muscle. Agreed. I don't lie to myself about what you do, she went on. You don't sugarcoat it. If I'm going to stand next to you, I need the real version, even when it's ugly. His gaze met hers. Ugly is the only version I know, he said. I won't insult you by dressing it up. And I keep my own life, Nichelle added. I work. I build something that's mine, not just yours. A small, thoughtful look crossed his face. That, he said, I can help with. The way he said it made a small chill run down her spine. Not from fear this time, from the sense that he had already started planning something she couldn't see yet. If you were offered safety and power in exchange for stepping deeper into a life you never wanted, would you take the deal? Or walk away and trust the world to be kind on its own? If these choices have you thinking about what you'd do in Nichelle's shoes, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next chapters show what happens when a waitress gets a set of keys that can change her entire life, and maybe her heart too. The bell above the door chimed as the first customer of the day walked into the coffeehouse. Sunlight spilled across polished concrete floors, catching on the copper light fixtures and the row of plants crowded along the front windows. Nichelle stood behind the counter, wiping down the espresso machine like it was a prize she'd fought 10 rounds for. The place still smelled faintly of fresh paint and sawdust under the stronger scent of coffee beans. Her logo, Wavefront Roasters, in clean white letters, gleamed on the wall behind her. Morning, she called out with a smile that actually felt real. What can I get started for you? The customer, a college kid with a backpack and messy curls, ordered a latte and stared around like he just walked into a magazine spread. This place is dope, he said. When did y'all open? Soft opened last week, Nichelle answered, moving through the motions like she'd been doing it for years. Grand opening soon. You're early. She steamed milk, pulled shots, slid the finished drink across the counter with a little flourish. As the kids sat down by the window, Tiara walked out from the back, apron already smudged with cocoa powder. Girl, the line was wrapped around the corner yesterday, Tiara said. If this is the soft open, I'm scared of the real one. That's the kind of scared I like, Nichelle replied. She still woke up some nights tasting smoke in her throat. She still saw fire when she closed her eyes. But now, when she walked out of her apartment, it was to this space. A shop with her name on the lease, the rent covered for a year, the build-out paid in cash that didn't trace back to any bank she'd ever heard of. The deed had arrived in an envelope with no return address. A storefront by the waterfront, just a few miles from the harbor where everything had changed. Inside the envelope, a single card with a line written in neat handwriting. For the woman who told the truth when the world stayed silent. No signature. But the faint scent of his cologne still clung to the paper. Tiara tapped a stack of cups into place. I'm still mad you didn't tell me sooner, she said. One day you're complaining about the restaurant schedule. Next thing I know you got keys to your own spot. You would have screamed it from the rooftop, Nichelle said. I needed a minute to believe it was real. Is he still around? Tiara asked. Nichelle paused, adjusting the grinder. Sometimes, she said. Not like you think. No dinners. No dates. Just check-ins. Check-ins looked like a black SUV parked across the street late at night, lights off, engine idling. They sounded like a phone that buzzed once with a single message, "You good?" They felt like knowing the alley behind her shop had cameras in every corner now, the kind that didn't belong to the city. The door chimed again. An older woman from the neighborhood walked in, followed by a dock worker in a reflective vest. The little line at the counter grew, and soon Nichelle was moving non-stop, shots, milk, pastries from the local bakery she'd partnered with. Her muscles ached, but it was the good kind of ache. The kind that came from building instead of running. Around noon, when the rush slowed, Tiara leaned on the counter. So what's the story you're gonna tell folks when they ask how you pulled this off? She asked. Because you know they will. I'll tell them I had help, Nichelle said. From someone who owed me a favor. Big favor, Tiara muttered. Big truth, Nichelle answered. She caught her reflection in the glass, a woman with tired eyes, sure, but also with her own space, her own name on the door. The girl who had shaken while slipping a napkin onto a Syndicate boss's table still lived inside her, but now she stood on different ground. If you walked into this coffeehouse and saw Nichelle smiling behind the counter, would you see the quiet business owner, or would you sense the storm she already survived to stand there? If this glow-up from server to owner is the kind of change that inspires you, hit subscribe and keep those notifications on, because the final chapter ties everything together with a scene that proves some debts can never really be repaid, they just change shape. The black SUV parked across the street just as the sun started to set. Inside the coffeehouse, the last of the afternoon customers lingered over half-finished drinks, their voices soft under the hum of lo-fi music. Nichelle wiped down the counter, glancing out the window like she always did around this time. The SUV had become part of her evenings, not every night, but often enough that she stopped pretending it was random. Tiara followed her gaze. He's here again, she murmured. Finish the register count, Nichelle said. I'll lock up after. Tiara nodded, giving her a look that said 1,000 things at once. Be careful, be smart, be yourself, then disappeared into the back. The sky outside was streaked with orange and purple, the harbor cranes silhouetted against the fading light. Nichelle flipped the sign on the door to closed and turned the deadbolt. The last customer left with a wave. Soon, it was just her and the sound of the espresso machine cooling. The SUV door opened. Seojin stepped out, dressed in a dark coat over a simple sweater, no tie, no entourage. The scar near his shoulder was hidden under layers, but she knew exactly where it sat. He walked across the street with the easy stride of a man who knew every camera in the area and had already decided which ones mattered. When he reached the door, she was there waiting. She unlocked it, just enough to let him in, then locked it again behind him. "Welcome to Waterfront Roasters," she said lightly. "You planning to actually buy something this time, or just stand there and judge my table layout?" He let his gaze travel over the space. "The layout is efficient," he said. "I like the corner table. Good sight lines." "Of course you picked that one," she murmured. He moved closer to the counter. The coffeehouse lights softened the angles of his face. Without the pressure of a crowd or the weight of a threat hanging over them, he looked younger. Still dangerous, still sharp, but more human than the rumors ever allowed. "How's the shoulder?" she asked. "Healing," he said. "The doctor complains that I don't rest enough." "She's right," Nichelle said. "You don't." A small silence stretched between them, comfortable and strange. "You've done well," he said, nodding toward the chalkboard menu, the wall of mugs, the framed photos of dock workers and local artists she'd started collecting. "The place feels alive." "It's a coffee shop, not a museum," she said. "People are supposed to bump things." His eyes landed on a photo by the register, a picture of her and Devin as teenagers, standing on a pier with cheap cones of ice cream, laughing at something the camera hadn't caught. "You put him where you can see him," Seojin said. "Yeah," she answered. "He earned that." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, placing it on the counter between them. "Quarterly," he said. "From an investor who prefers to stay quiet." She eyed it, then him. "You know this place is making money now, right?" she said. "I don't need you sending checks like I'm still stuck waiting tables." "It's not charity," he said. "It's a return on a choice you made. And a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That the night you slipped that napkin across my plate, you changed more than you meant to," he said. "For me. For you. For people who will never know your name." She looked down at his hands. They were steady now. No trembling. No blood. But she remembered them as they had been, smudged with soot, gripping Vivienne's wrist, holding the weight of his world. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I kept my mouth shut," she admitted. "If I walked past and pretended I didn't hear her in that hallway." "You'd still be at the restaurant," he said. "Your landlord would still be raising your rent. Devin would still be a question mark you circle around every night. And Vivienne would be sitting at some fundraiser, planning the next person to poison." "That's one version," she said. "It's the likely one," he replied. She picked up the envelope, weighing it in her fingers. "You ever get tired of carrying all these likely outcomes in your head?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "But it's the job." "Your job," she said. "Not mine." He smiled, just a little. "No," he agreed. "Yours is to make the coffee and tell me when the room feels wrong." She tilted her head. "You felt anything off today?" He considered. "One man by the window counted the exits twice before he sat down," he said. "But he left with 2 bags of beans and a cookie. I think he was just nervous." "You noticed that?" she asked. "I notice everything," he said. "It's how I stayed alive long enough to meet a waitress who wrote with shaking hands and still didn't miss a word." A warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the machines cooling behind her. It scared her a little. It also felt honest. She walked around the counter and stood beside him, looking out at the street. Cars passed. Somewhere, a siren wailed faintly, then faded. The city kept moving, like it always did. "You know the wild part?" she said. "Sometimes I look at that table by the window and think about how this all started with dessert." He glanced at her. "And a napkin," he added. "And a choice," she finished. They stood there in the quiet, side by side, 2 people tied together by a night neither of them could ever fully explain to anyone else. If you had the chance to change someone's fate with 4 words on a napkin, knowing it might rewrite your life too, would you write them, or walk away and keep your world small and safe? If Nichelle and Seojin's story moved you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that challenges you, inspires you, and gives you a place to share your thoughts. Drop your favorite moment from this story in the comments. You never know who your words might reach, or who they might give the courage to tell the truth when the world stays silent.